You may have caught a series of videos coming out on Billy Carson and the apologists and the atheist all discussing a debate that Billy Carson had. I'm not going to talk about that. Instead, I'm going to talk about a series of videos that I've seen between Michael Jones of Inspiring Philosophy and Derek Lambert of Mythvision. And in one particular video, which I watched the entire thing by Michael Jones, I saw a lot of situations where Derek Lambert was reviewing on his video. So Michael Jones was showing this, but Derek Lambert was reviewing Michael Jones' statements at a conference. And I believe it might be a conference that I was at in March of 2024 that was in Sarasota. I think that's where Michael got up on the stage and he talked about the dissimilarities between ancient mythologies and the New Testament. And so what Derek has is a thesis, and his thesis basically states that as follows. Here's his thesis. If people and events in the New Testament about Jesus' life are similar to ancient myths that preceded them, then we should view the New Testament through the lens of mythology. In this context, mythology is defined as false stories made up by people. So today we're going to watch a little bit about Derek Lambert, some of the things that they've talked about. We'll discuss the specific myths, and we'll discuss why this thesis has a faulty premise. And the idea is that the similarity or dissimilarity between these myths and the New Testament do not rule out the New Testament's historical presence and what the authors actually said about Jesus' life, Jesus' miracles, and his resurrection. So here we go. We're going to talk a little bit back to Derek, because Derek just put this video out an hour ago this morning, and I listened to part of it. So here's what he has to say. I'll just summarize. This kind of gives you some of the gist of it.
And the text says, as he went away, if you go away from the god, the shrine, the place where the wine was, it starts tasting like water. That doesn't mean it's water. No. That means it just tastes like water. Why does it start tasting like water then? If the text doesn't say it became water, but it starts transforming into the elements, that the accidents of water, but you can't know it didn't turn into the substance of water. It just doesn't indicate that.
You can see the rabbit hole that Derek is in. See what he is doing, and I'm going to present exhibits here to show you exactly what this is. So Derek is talking about Dionysus, and his theory is that Jesus, the story of the wedding at Cana, was crafted by the Bible authors to be similar to the story of Dionysus with water and wine. So the wedding at Cana was basically a crafting. It's not only is it not that close, but that's not the argument. The argument that IP and Mythvision have been having was how similar these myths are to the stories in the New Testament. I wouldn't even care if they were exactly like the stories in the New Testament. They aren't, but I wouldn't care if they were, because it doesn't rule out whether or not what happened in the New Testament is the truth. Okay, so let's get back to take a look at Exhibit A. This is from Derek. And I showed you that particular clip because it kind of gives you a feel for the mentality of Derek trying to talk about water and wine. Dionysus is a Greek god who's a winemaker. In one of his legends, a stream of wine tastes like water. So what? That doesn't mean that Jesus didn't transform 6 jugs of water into wine at the wedding of Cana. And it doesn't mean that Jesus might use similar myths, if you want to say, similar stories that have resonated with people for thousands of years to show he is the true myth, as C.S. Lewis would say. And I'm going to give you a couple quotes from C.S. Lewis in just a moment. Exhibit B is a Sumerian story. Now, Josh Bowen apparently had input into this whole idea, and he had a conversation with Inspiring Philosophy last April, apparently after this, on this Inanna story. So I was able to find the story of Inanna, and I'm going to give you the source in the next slide. But here's the story of Inanna. And you judge whether or not this is similar to Jesus' 3 days and 3 nights prior to his resurrection. Inanna, queen of heaven, the goddess of light and love and life, has set her heart upon visiting the netherworld, perhaps in order to free her lover Tammuz. She gathers together all the appropriate divine decrees, adorns herself with her queenly robes and jewels, and is ready to enter the land of no return. Let me break here. This was written somewhere between 1600 and 1900 years before Christ. I'll get back to it. Queen of the netherworld is her elder sister and bitter enemy, Ereshkigal, the goddess of darkness and gloom and death. Fearing lest her sister put her to death in the netherworld, Inanna instructs her messenger, Ninshubar, who is always at her beck and call, that if after 3 days she shall have failed to return, he is to go to heaven and set up a hue and cry for her in the assembly hall of the gods. Moreover, he is to go to Nippur, the very city where our tablets have been excavated, and there weep and plead before the god Enlil to save Inanna from Ereshkigal's clutches. If Enlil should refuse, he is to go to Ur of the Chaldees, whence, according to biblical tradition, Abraham migrated to Palestine, and there repeat his plea before Nana, the great Sumerian moon god. If Nana too refuses, he is to go to Eridu, the city in which Sumerian civilization is said to have originated, and weep and plead before Enki, the god of wisdom. And the latter, who knows the food of life, who knows the water of life, will restore Inanna to life. Okay, so you're seeing what happens. She's got a friend who's supposed to save her if she gets stuck in hell, basically, is what this story is. So it continues. Having taken these precautions, Inanna descends to the netherworld and approaches Ereshkigal's temple of lapis lazuli. At the gate, she is met by the chief gatekeeper, who demands to know who she is and why she came. Inanna concocts a false excuse for her visit, and the gatekeeper, upon instructions from his mistress, Ereshkigal, leads her through the 7 gates of the netherworld. As she passes through each of the gates, part of her robes and jewels are removed, in spite of her protest. Finally, after entering the last gate, she is brought stark naked and on bended knees before Ereshkigal and the 7 Anunnaki, the dreaded judges of the netherworld. These latter fasten upon Inanna their look of death, whereupon she is turned into a corpse and hung from a stake. So the comparison that Derek has is it's like Jesus being hung on the cross. But you'll see that the story is quite different. She, number one, is a liar. She went down there on false pretexts. And so we have that issue. And this is where Derek also thinks there's a true similarity. So passed 3 days and 3 nights. Now that's an idiom, 3 days and 3 nights. And I'm going to show you where we also see that prior to Jesus' time from the Bible. On the 4th day, Ninshubar, seeing that his mistress is not returned, proceeds to make the rounds of the gods in accordance with his instructions. As Inanna had foreseen, both Enlil of Nippur and Nana of refuse all help. Enki, however, devises a plan to restore her to life. He fashions the Kurguru and Kalaturu, 2 sexless creatures, and entrusts to them the food of life and the water of life, with instructions to proceed to the netherworld and to sprinkle this food and this water 60 times upon Inanna's suspended corpse. This they do, and Inanna revives. Okay, so as she leaves the netherworld, however, to reascend to the earth, she is accompanied by the shades of the dead and by the boogies and harpies who have their home there. Surrounded by this ghastly crowd, she wanders through Sumer from city to city. And if I were Derek, probably I'd be looking at Matthew and saying, oh my, this is so similar to the zombie apocalypse. But it's really not terribly similar. It's a story that was crafted in people's mind. Does that mean that we should discount the resurrection? The answer is no. There were many miracles that accompanied Jesus' resurrection. So let's look at the similarities. Now this, of course, this last part of the story came from earth-history.com. So that's where I was able to get it. This person called Kramer had taken some tablets, put them together, and put this story together. And I was thankful that I was able to find this. Notice the 3 days and 3 nights was around very, very long ago. We've got a very ancient tradition from Jonah. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Then Jonah prayed unto the Lord his God out of the fish's belly, and said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me. Out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou heardest my voice. For thou hadst cast me into the deep, in the midst of the seas, and the floods compassed me about. All thy billows and thy waves passed over me. Then I said, I am cast out of thy sight. Yet I will look again toward the holy temple. The waters compassed me about, even to the soul. The depth closed me round about. The weeds were wrapped around my head. I went down to the bottoms of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet hast thou brought up my life from corruption, O Lord my God. Okay, so Jesus also drew the comparison of his own crucifixion and resurrection to Jonah. Here's what he said. And this is prior to his resurrection and crucifixion. But he answered and said unto them, an evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall be no sign be given to it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas. For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Okay, so a little bit similar there. So the bottom line is, just because we have similarities between some ancient myths and people and events in the Old or New Testament doesn't mean we should interpret the people and events in the Old or New Testament as mere myths. All religions have hints of the truth, but only one is the way, the truth, and the life, Jesus. Here's what C.S. Lewis said in his book, Mere Christianity. If you are a Christian, you do not have to believe that all the other religions are simply wrong all through. If you are an atheist, you do have to believe that the main point in all the religions of the whole world is simply one big mistake. If you are a Christian, you are free to think that all those religions, even the queerest ones, contain at least some hint of the truth. People who all believe in God can be divided according to the sort of God they believe in, whether pantheist, polytheist, or monotheist, and dualist, where good and evil are equal, or non-dualist, which is as Christianity is, where evil is a corruption of the good. God of all good, the benevolent God, created good and evil and gave people a choice. And of course, evil is a corruption of the good. Here's what else C.S. Lewis said in his letter to Arthur Greeves. Now, the story of Christ is simply a true myth, a myth working on us in the same way as the others, but with this tremendous difference that it really happened. And one must be content to accept it in the same way, remembering that it is God's myth, where the others are men's myths, i.e. the pagan stories are God expressing himself through the minds of poets, using such images as he found there, while Christianity is God expressing himself through what we call real things. Therefore, it is true, not in the sense of being a description of God that no finite mind could take in, but in the sense of being the way in which God chooses to or can appear to our faculties. The doctrines we get out of the true myth are, of course, less true. They are the translations into our concepts and ideas of that which God has already expressed in a language more adequate, namely the actual incarnation, crucifixion, and resurrection. So just to return back to Derek and also to speak to Michael Jones of Inspiring Philosophy, I hope you two work out your differences. There was another person called Neil, the Gnostic informant, involved in this whole process. I hope things work out for you. Derek, I hope you come back to Christianity. We'll be saying prayers for you. I think we all should do that. And we want to bring our lost sheep back into the realm. And I also want to say that Derek's and Neil's references to IP's fans, if you want to call them, or just people who follow IP, people who are Christians as well. The reference to them as sheeple, fine, I'll be a sheep. I'd rather be a sheep than a goat. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Please like, subscribe, and do come again. And just remember, whether you eat, drink, or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Thank you.